Hello, and welcome to the World of Art and Magic podcast, where we talk to creatives about their inspirations behind their works and the symbolism and hidden meanings in our favorite games, films, or comics. My name is Wes. I'm an illustrator and comic artist. You can find my work in the links below. Today, I have my friend Ja with me. Ja, you want to give us an introduction?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Ja. I am a fellow creative. I've been in the creative fields for quite a long time, design and digital visual art, and I also coach. That's my jam right now. And I'm also
Mhm.
creating a multifaceted channel of art and 3D sculpture, 3D art that I'm deep in the thralls of. So that's a pretty exciting project. I'm sure we'll be talking about soon. But that's me. Yeah, yeah. Great to be
So,
here.
what is your 3D sculpture? It's like, didn't you say it was for a game that you're making, or?
Yeah, yeah. So I had this I had this epiphany many years ago that I was going to get into storytelling,
Mhm.
and this was probably in 2009, and I didn't know how to express my storytelling into any particular genre or any particular medium, I should say. And and so I tried out a lot of things. I I dove into script writing for a while, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get in. I'm gonna learn how to create scripts for movies and TV, and because I was convinced I was gonna create something in that space. And I also did some like dabbling with writing for a book. And after a while, I the logical part of my mind decided that the most entrepreneurial way of approaching a story project would be to create a game. And so this is how I landed into the game space. And I honestly didn't know the world very well. Like, obviously I played games. I
Mhm.
was nuts about them when I was young,
Mhm.
but I had no idea how they were made. And so as I went down the path of learning some of the craft, I've always been sculpting. I've been like in the digital sculpting space as a hobbyist for a number of years,
Mhm.
and it was time to take some of those skills and then pour that into like platforms like Unreal Engine and start learning and dabbling in that space. And yeah, the project, this creative project, unfolded into I formalized the idea like, yeah, I'm going to create a beat 'em up game in the beat 'em up genre, sort of a merger between um, kind of a Super Smash Brothers sort of elements of like combat play with a sort of traditional beat 'em up approach. Like it was a genre, they may or may not be familiar with. It was really
Mhm.
popular in the like 80s and 90s. It started out
Mhm.
with the first game I this sort of dates me, but the first game I remember playing um, and absolutely loving in the arcades when I was just a little kid was Double Dragon. And then as the 90s rolled in, I got a Sega Genesis, and I got into some of the beat 'em ups on that platform. I
Mhm.
like Streets of Rage, and so this, I don't know, for whatever reason, this genre of games just always like spoke to me.
Mhm.
And so that's how I had this sort of thing like percolating in the back of my mind somewhere. And then as I got into the storytelling component, I'm like, I just kind of merged these two worlds together. So I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
this is the thing I'm gonna do. So then I set about to like actually get into game development, like actually learn the craft. And I
Mhm.
realized it is crazy. It's massive. It is. There are so many like subs worlds within worlds.
Mhm.
It's such a deep rabbit hole. So I had to like pump the brakes a bit on that because I realized there's so many skills that I needed
Mhm.
to acquire in order to um, even get close to being able to produce what was in my mind. Because
Mhm.
there's a couple of roads you can take on game development. Well, just very in my simplified view of things. my which, there's probably a lot more, but let's just boil it down to two sort of ways of doing it. Is you either bootstrap a game, you just have an idea, and then you just everything about. Typically, you'd bootstrap in like an engine like Unity. There's a lot of like small indie games, and then you just kind of work on it. You pick away at a project for a few years, or a few months, even if it's just a tiny like kind of Flappy Birds kind of style game, like on a mobile. But what I'm thinking is like obviously a lot deeper. So it's a big project. So you chip away at something like that for a few years, and then eventually you have a game, and then you throw it on Steam, on platforms to sell the game, and then you just kind of cross your fingers and hope that your several years of investment are going to pay off. And I thought that approach was just so bananas. Like I'm like I can't. No, it's not how I want to roll. I worked like way back when I worked for an ad agency, like a web design ad agency for Fortune 500 companies, and so I worked on like Mercedes-Benz of North America website and like Home Depot.com and like big projects, these like massive projects, and incredibly well funded. These are tens of millions of dollars are being thrown at just their website per year kind of scenario. And ever since I got a taste for that kind of scale, I always wanted to go in that direction. Like I'm like, oh yeah, this is this big budget, like fully funded kind of experience. And that, so I'm thinking more of like in AAA development kind of style of game. And so in order to produce something that runs into the millions of dollars, that would require me to have a whole other set of skills to be able to fund such a project and to be able to attract attention to get the kind of funding for that kind of project. Fortunately, I have the marketing know-how to actually sell something like that. So I'm quite confident that producing a pitch and then having it in front of the right people, could seed funding for a project such as that. So that's more the interest and road I want to take is, maybe start with a Kickstarter and kind of go from there, and then iteratively build out a game like that has a budget of a few $1 million. So yeah, so that's the game journey. Right now I'm at the like very starting stages, I should say, where I'm just producing marketing content to attract attention, and then to build an audience, and then from that point, go from there. I have a few avenues to take it in, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to do something creative because it seems like this creator economy is just growing and growing. There's so many people that are making their own stuff. I had a guy who kickstarted a board game on my podcast. It should already be live. He was talking about his experience with it. I can't remember how much it is that he raised for his Kickstarter, but they did really well. I've also talked to some comic artists. There was another guy that I just did an interview with on this channel. His name is Joe Sangtan, I believe. He raised $69,000 on his first comic.
Right on.
And I mean, there's just so many options. If you can just at least get into the rounds of, like, I think with Joe, he said that his big thing was because I don't think he has a huge, massive following online, but he got like over 1,000 people to support his project on Indiegogo just by going and doing the rounds with different podcasts, talking with different people in the independent comic space, and pretty much starting there and building an audience that way. So it's not even, it seems like it's not even necessarily about, posting up reels every single day or necessarily having to put out a lot of content. But it's about making those connections with other people that are also doing creative stuff, and everybody's coming together as a community instead of trying to compete with one another. You support each other in this community of doing creative things.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We're going. All right. Well, sorry. That was my technical malfunction.
It's all
Apologize.
good. So as we were saying before it cut up there for a second,
Yeah.
it's just an awesome time to be a creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The capability, the tools and capabilities and just access to information is just, it's insane. We have everything. And I mean, this last year when Midjourney turned from, being producing weird, distorted, creepy images to suddenly producing amazing photorealistic fantasy,
Yeah.
whatever the heck you want kind of imagery, just
Hmm.
with a single upgrade, just flipped so many creative industries on their head. It's
Yeah.
incredible. I am so pumped. Like when I got into Midjourney, are you using
Hmm.
it very much?
No, I'm not really a fan of it, to be honest with you, just because of the way that the companies have data scraped a lot of artists' work.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it's a cool tool, and it's obviously here to stay. Like, have you heard of that Magic the Gathering painter, the oil painter, that his name was put into it 90,000 times? Like, there's more.
Yeah.
If you, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, stuff like that, and like
It's
the fact
crazy.
that he didn't get compensated for that.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. Like I said, I know what you're talking about. The imagery where like people were doing like movie stills from like an '80s dark fantasy movie or something. It's cool. It's really cool. It's just it's very strange because we've gotten to this point where where we live in such a image saturated environment, and I guess you could say a belief saturated environment. Like that's mostly
Mhm.
what we're dealing with. We're dealing with these things that have like a lot of leverage. Like
Mhm.
you can create an image now and in just a second, and you can put it out there and it can have an influence on people. Like
Mhm.
the cool part of that is the ability for people to communicate something, like especially like if you're a concept artist for a game or something like that and you want to communicate to your concept artist your idea, you can use a program like that. And I
Mhm.
think that's cool. But then on the other side of it, it's like, what kind of a world are we going to live in when people can just manufacture information? They can they can manufacture reality, and you
Yeah.
can't you can't tell the difference. It's very strange.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're already there. Like we're in the future. We're we're we've been walking towards the Star Trek holodeck.
Hmm.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
been walking towards that technology for a while, and I'm kind of excited that we're getting to that place where we can actually have that kind of experience.
Hmm.
Um, I'm like I've I went through a lot of different feelings and
Hmm.
a lot. I've thought about this quite a lot, as most creatives have. But ultimately, I'm okay with it. I mean, it is what it is. Like
Hmm.
the genie's out of the bottle, right? So you can never put it back in. Um, what happened with the data scraping? Yeah, I mean, it's there. It should have been done with consent. There should have been.
Hmm.
But this is something it's weird. Adobe's doing this right now. Is they're basically like, they update their terms of services, and everybody's got it. Well, not everybody. I don't have Adobe. I jumped out of Adobe a
Hmm.
couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But most people, in the creative industries, they use Adobe products, so they're obviously like, consenting to the latest terms and agreements when they get an update.
Hmm.
And then now Adobe's like, oh yeah, by the way, we're capturing everything that you're making in Photoshop and we're feeding it into our own data set. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
like
It's
if there's a better time to jump out of Adobe products, is now.
Yeah, so I know that there's a guy that I follow. I want to get him on here and interview him because he has a much more in-depth understanding of like a lot of what's going on with the AI art stuff. I think his name is James Zapata.
Hmm.
I'll put his video. He has a video about an argument against AI images. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's basically like a 2-hour breakdown of like all the legal ramifications
Hmm.
of what these companies are doing and whatnot. I mean, I think I think that if we're going to go into this new era, I think on the other side of this, there's a possibility. Like I've heard a lot of people talk about AI in general. The people that have made it, and they'll say, like on the other side of this, if we can handle this, then we could live in a world of abundance where people don't, where even the concept of like I'm going to make a living with something that I'm doing creatively is not really an issue because all of your needs will be met, and so we will just do creative things for the reason you're supposed to do them, which is that you want to do them because it
Hmm.
feeds your soul,
Yeah.
not because you want some sort of end result, right?
Hmm.
um, and we're kind of in this weird phase where artists have started to become kind of like a blue collar kind of position in society, and then we had that in this short period of span, and then it feels like for a lot of illustrators that has just been taken over, and
Hmm.
it's not like music, because music is unionized. You can't just make like or you have a big business behind it, right? You can't
Yeah.
just take a bunch of Snoop and Dre and just feed that into an algorithm and then just sell the albums.
Yeah.
Like the music business will come down on you. But an illustrator who's putting their stuff on DeviantArt, they have nothing that protects them, and they're investing their time into the skill and then trying to make a living with it and provide for their family or for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's it's so it's an interesting technology. But then on the other side of that, I talk about Philip K. Dick here on my channel a lot,
Hmm.
and it's totally in the realm of everything he was depicting in his books. And in Blade Runner, it's like, where are we going to get to when we have all these companies that own everything? They own everything, and everybody else is just like scraping on the bottom of
Yeah.
society on some level,
Well, anytime there's someone who's making a reference towards, okay, we're gonna take away someone's ability to make an income, like, I mean, to an extent, right? When
Hmm.
Midjourney comes in, goes and
Yeah.
tramples a bunch of illustrator jobs,
Hmm.
um, and just everybody's scrambling. It's a weird place to be in. Um, and then there's this sort of talk from the people up high, who are running these companies, of like the utopian vision of what it ultimately sounds to me is just some sort of like neo communist kind of
Hmm.
thing, that they're like,
Yeah.
let's just magically paint over the fact that we need to have an economy that functions and have everybody, making a decent living to be able to do what you need to do, and selling a dream at some point in the future where everything is going to be free and abundant. Is No one cares about that, because the fact is if you're if you're getting your legs chopped out from underneath you, from you know needing to support your family through illustration, and that's no longer an avenue, that's a problem. And
Hmm.
I fully understand that. But the thing is you have to. It's an opportunity for anybody who sees it, because myself, as being an entrepreneur, I have the mindset of an entrepreneur, and
Hmm.
I see possibility and opportunity in these new technological advances. And I don't mean like some BS kind of way, like producing, going on a mid journey, producing 10,000 pieces of art, and like putting it on a Shopify store, right, and printing a
Yeah.
bunch of T-shirts. Like, I don't mean bullshit like that. I what I
Yeah.
mean what I mean is actually, you think about it strategically, and you think about the technology as a tool of leverage.
Hmm.
For example, like for me creating a game, it's an impossibly huge project. So if I can outsource some of the weight of that to artificial intelligence, for example, with game script writing, although Chat GPT is by no means a great creator of original works of art, I have used it with some moderate success in creating certain kinds of structural frameworks for writing. So I can ask it to do things, and it can create it'll create mediocre to garbage writing, but the structure is there, and then
Hmm.
structure and then put my own content into it. And it saves me a
Hmm.
lot of time and energy. So it is helping me to advance and move the ball forward on a big project. But that means you need to have a big project. You can't just be doing this service-based work anymore. I mean, that's not going to cut it. Because if there's any sort of skill you have in that sort of, that sort of space, someone's going to come in ultimately and see, seize the artwork that you've created, and then feed it into an algorithm, and then pump out, other sort of variants of that artwork, and that obviously drops the value of that original artwork, because you can just spam it all day long now. Anybody can spam it. So it's not its value diminishes. So you have to think like a step change above that, and you have to think about how that art can feed into a larger project. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that it could go. I think on the one hand, yes, you can put something out there and then it can be devalued because it's being fed into an algorithm. There's actually a program that a lot of illustrators have been using called Glaze, and it basically protects your work from being scraped. So there's different like countermeasures that people have taken. I think the other thing too is that, and I think we're going to find some sort of a healthy medium to where AI generated stuff, it's just the way it is that people are going to communicate online, just in the same way we do with memes. Like it's the next evolution of a meme. But on the other hand, we don't give memes that same value as we do an original oil painting, right?
Yeah.
So if you're an illustrator or something like that, like again, it's like the flow of attention and the flow of like what it is that people value. If there's so much AI generated imagery, people are just going to take it for granted and see it for what it is, which is that it's just essentially like another version of a meme or something like that, as opposed to, this is a work of art. This is an original thing. It's one thing. You can buy prints of this, or you can get the original, and then that's it. Right. Yeah. So those places, I'm not saying that like illustrators are completely out of work, because I do know illustrators that are working, and I've talked with other illustrators that are in this space and their opinion about it. It's just, it is definitely an upset. And then obviously this is impacting programmers, and it's impacting other people that are doing
everybody.
Yeah,
Me being
everybody.
a former designer, having spent many years doing graphic design, web design, everything, logo design. I went into Midjourney and I just typed up a logo, like a concept for a logo, and it just spit out some. Obviously, like, it's a bit weird. There's some weirdness to it, but it spit out about 80%, 80 to 90% something original and usable, and therefore I could take that, with my skill set, and then just make some modifications to it, and then bang, I'm done. And that gets around in that use case. That gets around another avenue, which, this whole like clip art, pre AI. There was all these they're still around. Like freepick.com, for example, is a place that I used to go quite a bit, and use that sort of royalty free vector art illustrations to be able to put into a project, and just kind of like take elements and reuse them and so forth, and like do iconography and that sort of thing. And now those places have become or will become, if they don't update to an AI system, they'll become irrelevant, because this replaces that. And it also, you create original that is outside of the traditional sort of copyright structure of like using one of those services, and then you can create something that you own the copyright to instantaneously. And that's also another factor too, is the time factor of being able to, because like for me as an entrepreneur working with other people, if I can do something faster and better, if it's easier, cheaper, faster, better, which AI really ticks all those boxes using it. Like for example, like working with a copywriter, or working with sort of in the idea phase of a concept illustration. I wouldn't say a final, like AI doing a final product is not something that appeals to me, for all the reasons that you stated. It's like this, it's kind of weird. Like it doesn't, it
cut out. Go back one Go back one sentence, you cut out and then cut back in.
Okay,
You
yeah.
said the concept art, it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah. With when dealing with like AI generated art, the value is lost because
Yeah,
there's nothing pegging it to human effort. There's
yeah,
nothing that's special about it anymore. So it's dropped its value down to zero, and I or nearly down to zero, because you would have to put it on something in order to create value. Like you could, and there are obviously people doing this. I haven't really researched it, but it's just an obvious use case. Is there would be a bunch of people who don't possess any artistic skill who go and like get a Midjourney account, produce a bunch of images, then slap it on a bunch of merch, and then open up a Shopify store and then do that whole jam. It's sort of like the Amazon FBA, like that sort of
yeah,
like those kind of BS businesses. It's the same thing.
hmm
It's the same thing. It's like the bottom feeder of the business world.
yeah,
So it's just the thing. It happens. It's just that's what it is. I've just accepted it. Like it is
hmm
what it is. I just looked at it. I'm like, all right, this is where we are. This is humanity in 2023. We have this technology, and then instead of being upset about it, I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to embrace it. What can I use it? What can I use it for, and how can it further what it is that I want to create?
yeah. I'm
But as
working.
far as the ethical nature goes, that's I don't know. For me personally, I just I'm not using I use AI to assist my ability to produce things which are complicated and require many phases and many steps in order to do. So if I
Mhm.
can shorten a certain phase, like for example, if I want to produce some concept art illustration to create some scenery shots for ideation purposes for a particular level, right? For this game design, I can run some ideas that I have because I already have
Mhm.
some mood boards. I've already kind of assembled some ideas, and then I can start running some AI processes to produce some artwork of something which is like, yeah, this is kind of this is the direction I want to take it.
Mhm.
And then I can take that stuff and then use that as the basis to be able to build upon. But I don't use that ever directly as like something to
Yeah.
as an end output. But however, there are some interesting cases where you could take AI generated imagery, which I've dabbled in a little bit, from a texture standpoint, and be able to
Mhm.
generate AI textures to then wrap in 3D models.
Mhm.
Really
Yeah.
speed up the process of being able to produce worlds and produce sets, and because it's such a time intensive process to produce uh, the game assets. So
Yeah.
anything that speeds that process up is like a benefit. So yeah,
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Like I said, from an illustrator's point of view, it just seeing a company make so much money off of art that was scraped off of like ArtStation or Instagram, and they make
yeah,
the money and the artists don't. It's crazy. It's just
it's
really
crazy.
crazy
Like,
to me.
what's the valuation of Midjourney? And like how much are they making? It's crazy, like billions, right? It, it's
Definitely.
it doesn't make any sense to me why. Well, it makes sense to me that the Silicon Valley mantra has been is just do stuff, break things, and just kind of like
hmm
just go forward, and then from that point on, then we'll deal with the consequences of it, rather than being like conscientious. Like thinking like I don't know what tribe this is, or some Native American wisdom thought of like looking 7 generations in the future and
hmm
seeing that we have to make decisions and steer the course uh, towards that. We have to be respectful of multiple generations, and not just how do we like build the thing as fast as possible and give zero fucks.
hmm
Can I swear
Yeah.
here or no?
Well, that just
I'm
happens.
just
I don't. I don't
dropping.
think that. I don't think that YouTube cares as long as it's not within the first couple of minutes or something.
Right. Okay. I'll keep
Yeah.
it.
I. Yeah. It's a crazy like phase that we're going through. I'm actually working on a game right now, is just doing like UI stuff for this game on Steam. I think we just put it on the festival, the Steam festival that's going on. I think it's right now, or it's about to. But it's called Realm Divided, and I don't think that it's going to take away all of the work from that, because even though you can generate that stuff, like you said, it could be used as a way to build like a mood board.
Yeah.
Specifically, you have like an art director or somebody, and they're like, put something into it and go like, I kind of want something that feels like this, without it feeling like a generic AI thing. So in that way, I can see how it can be useful. It can be used as like a reference in that sense. But yeah, it's just a weird thing that we live in. Like I talked with one of the previous guests. His name is Reinstall Paul, and he does like a bunch of analysis of like films and movies and stuff like that, and the subtext of this stuff. And we were talking about Metal Gear Solid, and I don't know if you played the second one, where there's this
Which
where
platform? PS2?
Yeah, it was on PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
Well, there's a really good video that anybody listening to should check out called Selection for Societal Sanity. And it's like the end of the game, you get to the end of the game, and you have this AI. You find out that the kernel that you've been relying on this whole time is an AI program. And he starts to give you like the villain speech, the big reveal of what it is that's really going on. And he basically breaks it down, and he says that like human beings generate so much trivial trash that truth is drowning in all of this information that we live in. We live in like the flood that we will that truth will be lost in is the flood of information, right?
Yeah. And
it seems like that is another step towards that direction of like what we were talking about before the podcast, the Tower of Babel. We're building this artificial intelligence, and it seems like it's almost an imitation form of like the Logos, right? Like it is kind of like this physical version of the Logos. It's this intelligence that's greater than us. We're feeding into it, and then it's just generating all of this information. Yeah. And in the game Metal Gear Solid 2, the AI is what actually, it says that it's trying to create context, because we create so much trash. We don't know what is true, what isn't true. And so it creates context by omitting things and whatnot.
Yeah. That's the job of creator. I don't know, putting like a piece that was created, that we created, and then putting it above us, I think is a bad idea. Yeah, I don't think that. I think we have a conquering nature to us. The parable of the two wolves. Basically, the wolf, the Native American parable. That there are two wolves inside of us, and then whatever wolf, there's one that's evil and spiteful and all things negative, and that is good, virtuous, and like caring for others, the good wolf. And it doesn't. We have this nature within us, and it's just a matter of which we feed is what becomes. And so we have a culture which is being steered by bad actors that is attempting to get us down this hedonistic, AI-driven world, so we can fulfill our destiny in their eyes of some sort of utopian Aldous Huxley world, where we're all drugged up and just kind of, I don't know, just doing being in our little boxes, like little like in a zoo, some sort of human zoo, which is not a world I want to live in. I think it's like that's not my place. It's not my jam.
Yeah, it definitely seems like, maybe from some people's point of view, you could look at it and say like, oh, it's, none of this is planned. It's all just by accident. But it seems very deliberate to me. I mean, like there is a deliberate attempt to control people's mind and their ability to put their attention on things.
I think
Uh,
anyone who's saying that it's not deliberate, I think it's a cope, because they don't
yeah.
want their perception of the world to be shattered by the truth,
Hmm.
because that's just the hard truth. Painted the picture. You can delete that
Yeah.
word. I won't say that again.
No, it's fine.
Yeah,
We can talk about whatever. It's
yeah.
it's totally
Well,
it's basically
there's some words we don't want to
okay.
have. So
Okay.
I'll be careful. But anyways, that which we shall know over the last few years really opened our eyes to the giant mechanisms, the machinery that is the man that we got a peek under the hood of the man behind the curtains, in the Wizard of Oz, right? That
Hmm.
sort of that
Hmm.
situation where we're seeing it really is being steered by certain individuals and groups of individuals that want humanity to go in a particular direction, which is not for the benefit of the majority of us, but for the benefit of a few. It's a big land grab, and I'll have no part of that. That is not
Hmm.
what I want. And to deny it, I mean, come on, like there's too much evidence. We know what's going on. I mean, like we can see it. You just have
Yeah.
to be able to like pin some very important dots together, and it's not even that complicated. You know, a lot of this weird sort of sort of like fuming edges of conspiracy theory that we've been hearing about for a long time. A lot of that's been proven true, and a lot more
Yep.
of that is continuing to be unfolding. So
Hmm.
I think it's just as it's no less weird to me to think about that and like understand it as being this is a part of the story, of the human story that we're dealing with right now. It's not any weirder for me than it is to like to go into Amazon, or I'm sorry, to go into an AI and then start typing words and then producing photorealistic imageries. I mean, it's just as weird. It doesn't make neither of these things that I'm interfacing with make sense to me in a regular sort of world. Like we've definitely crossed into another threshold of reality, in my opinion.
And I think that one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on and talk to you is because we're talking about the AI stuff and we're talking about like how this could take away work and whatnot. But I think that there is also another understanding that is coming up in this entrepreneur space, which is much more of, and what I think is interesting about the entrepreneurial space is that there's also a spiritual element to it. Like we have many different hats. We have the
Mm-hmm.
business or the marketing hat. We have this idea of like we want to get out there and we want to sell our stuff, but then there's also the spiritual side of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's so much confusion in the world as far as around doing something creative and trying to make that your main thing. You know, we get this idea put into our heads that we shouldn't follow what it is that's in our heart because it's not going to make us any money, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the thing that is confusing to people is, and why there's so much suffering in the world, is because we don't listen to that, because we have been confused by the way that people control our society, that they tell us that we're so externally stimulated, we're so externally focused that we forget that our source is the infinite. It's our connection
Yeah.
to the infinite. It's not another person. It's not
Yeah.
a job. It's not a business. It's not this corporation. We're putting up that, in that sense, you're putting up an idol, whether that's a person or a business or a career even.
Yeah.
You're putting that up on a pedestal and you're worshiping it, and that's why it's a sin. Like I'm a big fan of Neville
Yeah.
Goddard, and I don't know if you know who he is. Neville
Who?
Goddard.
Mm,
Neville Goddard.
Neville Goddard. No.
So he was like a New Thought guy during like the 50s and 60s, but his interpretation of the Bible is really interesting because I grew up as a Christian, and then I became atheist because just because living in the South, it just didn't vibe with me. And really through like Buddhism and through meditation, I came across Neville's interpretation of the Bible, and I found it so interesting because his reading of it is so much more mystical. But his idea is that, sin means missing the mark. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It means you're missing the mark. You're missing. So if you put it in the context of like idolizing something, right? You're missing the mark because you're putting this emphasis on something that is external to you, and you're putting that power on it rather than the very natural divine connection it is that you have with source inside of yourself. Like, you don't need somebody else's permission in order to connect with that. And I've noticed over this last year of doing this project with my comics and doing the video analysis of Blade Runner and stuff like that, that your needs, if you surrender into that, if you surrender into that divine source, all of your needs are taken care of for you. Like, even the most minute, like, thing it is that you're supposed to do, like even a very, a decision it is that you're trying to make. If you just sit back and you essentially ask your higher self, you'll get the answer like that. And the reason why we're so confused is because there's all of this social media bullshit that's feeding these different ideas about this is the way it is that you should think about this group of people or whatever. And it's just confusing us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's too much of that. Just got to unplug and touch earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is that simple. Is get into nature for a while and it all straightens itself out.
How did you get involved in like reading the Kabbalah?
Oh, well, I've doubt, man, that world, that was a while ago.
How has it influenced your creativity?
So when did this start? So I'm thinking back to, right after my corporate job, I needed to get out. I had to get out. It just was driving me crazy. And I left suddenly, sold my condo, and went on a mystical journey. And I ended up in Peru.
Nice.
Yeah. Peru, drank ayahuasca.
Oh, God.
It was quite the experience.
Okay.
But there was a moment before then where I went to a meditation festival in New York State, and this was the Kadampa branch of Tibetan Buddhism, and the lineage holder of that branch was doing a medicine Buddha empowerment, and I was invited. So I went to some meditation, some like weekly meditations at this Tibet. It was actually being met in the basement of an old library, and there was this monk who would just do these little meditations and kind of a little bit of a discussion on emptiness and so forth. And I was attending those, and then out of the blue, a friend of mine mentioned, emailed me after a few years, who I'd met in Singapore when I was living in Southeast Asia, and we struck up a conversation, and then she'd she's like, I'm going to this meditation retreat, and you should come. And like it turned out we were in the same lineage of Tibetan Buddhism, like from where I was in Calgary at the time, and where she was in Singapore. So I was like, yeah, okay, this is like sort of fates entwining, right? So I went there, and anyways, I got this empowerment. It was actually a very psychedelic experience. It's very magical, very definitely very magical. Like the Tibetan Buddhists, they're on this like very magical like frequency. It's very interesting. And anyways, I did that, and then I went to Peru like right after. We both did. We went to Peru right afterwards, and then I drank ayahuasca. And then in the ayahuasca ceremony, there was the Buddhist empowerment. It's opened up something inside of me, and that led to a very mystical experience in one of the ayahuasca journeys, where I was basically channeling this medicine Buddha energy, and ended up healing this woman. Like, she had some karmic lineage kind of stuff going on, and and this like energy took over and went through my body, and then I became the channel for it, and I was helping assist, like, heal her, like shed away all this karmic stuff. That experience, afterwards, it was a lot of, there was a lot of contemplation, and
Mm-hmm.
magic is real. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
You can really get to that place. You can really, like, dial the switches in the etheric realms, and you can open up doors. And that opened up this whole understanding that I really wanted to understand this. And so then I went into other mystical traditions, and that's how I got into, I would say, dabbling in the Kabbalah, because it's deep, right? It's a very
Mm-hmm.
deep thing. Dabbling in the Kabbalah, dabbling in other mystical, traditions, and kind of getting an understanding of magic and how it works. So I look at magic as being a technology. It's just a hidden ancient technology that we have access to. It's just that, for whatever reason, not many of us are privy to it, don't even understand it, or just don't know how to work with it. I'm not entirely certain why it's not more known. I mean, in certain places it certainly is, But anyways, I look at it like a technology. Like, there is a way to operate in these other realms, and if you have the understanding of how to access, like, use it in whatever way you want to use it. It's not inherently good or bad. It's just it's tech. It's just a way to extend your capability. And as I worked in this space and I got to understand this, I started opening doors, and some doors I didn't want to open. And that led to some circumstances. I was like, whoa, this is some pretty serious stuff. And that's when I decided to back off, and, like, kind of, like, realize that there's you can get burned if you play with fire in those spaces. So as far as, like, the specifics of the Kabbalah stuff, I don't know. I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. I'd be interested in what your experiences are, and where that's
I
led
mean,
you, creatively speaking, too.
I only know it, like, tangentially, based off of, like, a lot of the, I guess you would say, reality creation type stuff it is that you come across, like, on YouTube and whatnot, and
Okay.
people referencing in terms of, like, the law of vibration and those sorts of things. That's all it is that I really know about it. But I do think that it is interesting that we have, you're saying that this is a technology, and you can kind of exist in these other realms, and you can, you can channel things from these other realms. And it seems like that's what we're doing whenever we're doing something creative. I feel like that's something that's pretty much well understood in the spiritual field. If you actually look into this stuff, is that it's not really you that's doing it.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I started to do the Philip K. Dick, the little analysis videos that I have of like Blade Runner, a lot of the times they would write themselves, and I mean, that's what it felt like. It just felt like it was writing itself, and I was just channeling it, and I was putting it down. In the video editing, it would just be like I would be able to grab something and just plug it into place. And from my perspective, I guess it's what I've learned about creativity, and what I think is useful to understand, no matter what it is that's going on outside. It can look like, oh, well, I've built up this skill as an illustrator, I've built up this skill as an artist, and now it's useless. That's what we see when our rational mind looks out into the world, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is that we see.
Yeah.
But what I've learned about creativity is that, I mean, it's completely infinite. And if Source wants to create that, then it is going to provide a way for it to be created. It's not going to just let you, it's not going to just give you something and then just be like, well, you can't support yourself while you're doing this. So, and then just throws you away. Like, there's an actual unconditional love that is in everything.
Yeah.
And, it's like, even something as simple as, like, being able to drink a clean glass of water, that is unconditional love. The universe gave that so that you can have the experience of being alive without even and we completely take it for granted. And I feel like that so much of creativity is just about, like I was saying, what I noticed in my experience over this last year, I would do the Philip K. Dick stuff. I would work on the comics, or I'd work on the analysis videos, and then I would start to get doubts in my mind, and I would start to turn away from that and start doing something else, thinking like, okay, I need to do this other thing in order to get money or something, right?
Yeah.
And the doubts would just keep growing, and everything felt like I was fighting upstream.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just, there was nothing was clicking into place, and then I would just surrender and just be like, okay, let me go back to doing what it is that I'm doing here. And as soon as I would do that, it was like turning on a machine again. Things
Mm-hmm.
would just synchronistically, like, I'll go to like a random, a random, like, there's like a book depository that was close by this place where I was buying some weed one day. And I just walked up and I put my hand on a random movie and I picked it up and it was Minority Report. And I was like, okay, and it's things like that, like those things. It's not that anybody's special. It's just when things click into place like that, you're going with the flow instead of against
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It really is my compass to when I'm doing something I should be doing. And lately, I've been in the flow again, so I've been really excited about that. But it's the flow is, you got to put in the effort. You got to take the risk too, because
Mm-hmm.
it's scary to go and do something that you've is new to you. It's just
Mm-hmm.
we all have. It's genetic. I think it's just from times past, it is safer, and you have a higher degree of survival if you're not
Mm-hmm.
doing new things, if you're only doing what keeps you alive. So we have a lot of that sort of um, energy that is keeping us from moving in the direction of something that is exciting and new, but also scary. So it
Mm-hmm.
really becomes you kind of have to train yourself to courageously step into something that where you feel naked and exposed, and you feel incredibly vulnerable, and that really is that space of creativity. And then from that place, that vulnerableness, that's where all the good things come from, because all your guards are dropped, and all the energy is flowing, and everything just comes into place, and we seem to be plugged back into the system, this whole system again, instead of being when we're in a state of fear, and we're playing small, and we're saying, oh, we can't do this. We're unplugging ourselves from that whole system, and that connection to source and connection to energy. And it's palpable once you gain the awareness of it. You can really see how calibrated, how tuned in, and how connected you are. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I have learned to do is to put the brakes on trying to push forward on something if I'm feeling I'm really disconnected, and to really just recollect myself. Sit, meditate, just do something that gets me into a space where I have that calm center again, and then I can restart, and then I get back into that flow state again. And I'm trying to do that as much as possible. Like, I really just want to occupy that all the time, and I think it's possible. I think the more you just commit to something you want to do, you act courageously, and move forward with it. You develop a new capability, and then you step into a new level of confidence, and then that process just unlocks more potential, and it just creates an upward spiral momentum. So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah. So there's a guy that I listen to. His name is Bashar, and
yeah, Bashar. Yeah,
you like Bashar?
I love listening to Bashar. It's great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for people that are listening, so this guy, you can think that he's bullshitting or not, but he says that he's channeling an alien, and this alien
Yeah.
is talking through him.
It's
But
legit. It's legit. When you really listen for a
yeah,
while, and you kind of like let the guard down, and you listen
hmm,
to what the transmission is, you're like, wow, this stuff is pretty high level.
it's so clear on what it is that like I really don't like these terms of like law of attraction, reality creation, stuff like that, because they're so it goes back to those thing that we were talking about before. Like, we're in this world of beliefs and ideas. As soon as somebody hears any of these things, then you already have a preconception of it in your mind, and then you go like, oh, this is all bullshit.
Yeah.
And to those two skeptics, to their point of view, they have a point in the sense that there's like this game of telephone that's going on, where
Yeah.
there's truth to these things, but so many people have said them, and those people don't necessarily have the understanding from personal experience, that it gets to a point where you're like, where people are saying things that just are not in alignment with it. But Bashar, the way that he explains exactly how it is that we are creating reality in terms of our personal experience, like you said, it's so clear. And I've listened to so much of this stuff, and I don't know if it's just because, he's saying it's an alien that's channeling through him.
Hmm.
But whenever I started to listen to him, that was whenever things really started to click for me, that I was like,
Hmm.
this is actually true, because it's so it becomes so obvious that it's really the only thing it is that you can rely on is your faith, really. Like, I just had this experience yesterday. So I'm going to Japan in September for an artist. It's a storytelling meetup. It's called the horse is Trojan horse is a unicorn. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay, so it's like filmmakers and illustrators and artists get together, and it's like a networking thing, right?
Hmm.
And so I've been thinking about and kind of channeling my energy towards, I need to network with other people and whatnot. And then I'm at a sketch group with other artists. This other guy tells me that he goes to this group, and it was so interesting to me that, like, if you sit down, the way that Bashar says it is, he says, sit down and come to a center of yourself, and then ask yourself, what is the most exciting thing it is that you could do right now in this moment? That
Hmm.
is, and it doesn't have to be in relation to a career goal or anything.
Hmm.
It's just, what is the most exciting thing I can do now? That might be going for a walk or something at a park, right?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
follow that. You go for a walk at a park, and all of a sudden you run into a person who has a connection with somebody else, and that opens up this whole other doorway for you, right? Because
Hmm.
we can't see it. Our rational mind cannot see the connections that our higher mind can see.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah. There's this concept called the one thing. It's a book, actually,
Okay.
and there's not a lot to it. It really is. It really is that simple.
Hmm.
Is you just need to focus on the next step. You just have to discover what that next step is, and then do it, and then that leads you in the direction you want to go. So
Hmm.
I'm a big proponent of that, both consciously, and also there are times where you're just being led in a curious direction, and you
Hmm.
just have an inkling you need to go that way, and you just need to follow it, and just discover and see what happens as you go.
Yeah.
And it's always something that leads you to more magic and more synchronicity and more, of the
Yeah.
good stuff. So
Yeah.
I tend to follow that when I'm not, getting in front of myself and, you know,
Yeah.
doing what we do. So is various forms of self sabotage. I
So
obviously try
what?
to stay away from it.
So we'll go ahead and wrap it up here in a minute. But
Yeah.
like, what would you say is the thing that gets in our way the most? Like, what? Yeah. What? You talk about a lot on your Instagram and on your feeds and stuff, which I'm going to put all the links to your stuff in the description.
Yeah.
But you talk about like procrastination. You talk about a lot of these different things. So I'm curious what your take is on that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the internal world. It's our internal belief system. It is very rarely an external issue that we have,
Hmm.
that is impeding our progress. Very rarely. There's only a small percentage. And if you're living in any sort of modern country, where you have access to technology like we do, you really don't have a lot of problems. Like we have it pretty easy as far as human history goes. It
Yeah.
really does amount to your belief system and your the mental blocks that you have. So if you learn how to deconstruct those and install better programs, better ideas, better mindsets, then you unlock more of your capability. And that's why I'm sharing what I share, is I'm sharing mindset shifts that if you have this, if you just take and change the perspective, you can unlock massive amounts of potential. You can 3-4x your capability overnight if you just remove one bad mental block, one belief system, and install something that is much more harmonious with your overall energetic being.
Okay. So do you get into actually how to do that through your channel? Is that something you wanna aim your channel towards, like how to remove these beliefs? Because it seems like
Yeah,
there's different ways, or people have different perspectives on what that means.
yeah. So the format of a reel is, it's tight, concise. It's enough to
Mhm.
introduce you to a concept, but really, it depending upon which belief set we would be working on. This is something that gets into the heart of coaching. Is really, that's a lot of what coaching is helping someone get over themselves, get over a block or a mental plateau that they're at, and help them see a bigger perspective of who they are and who they want to be, and just reflect to them their potential. And it is through that process, which is a guided process, and it's something that does require reps, really. Like, if you have a mental model, for example, understanding, let's see, the one thing is one of the reels that I posted recently, and understanding that you can have a whole to-do list of things you need to get done, and, like, just the whole clutter of the day, and just social
Mhm.
media like bombarding your brain all day, and you don't really know what's going on, wander around in the semi confusion. um, if you know what it is you want to create, concept of what it is I want to get, and all you need to do is you just need to know the next step. That's really it. You just need to know the next step. So the mental model, or the method here, is to be able to parse through all the noise and then get to the signal. And so you just need to focus on that one thing, do that one activity that moves the ball forward for your biggest life goal, and then that's how you generate the momentum, and that's how you make progress. So just doing that one, like, if you become a master at being able to do that one technique, you can, like, 10x your life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Cool. So we can follow you at, what is your
Yeah.
socials?
Yeah. Well, I've got two sets. If we're talking about creativity, from Infinity TV, I'm on TikTok and on YouTube, and
Mhm.
I think those, and on X too, X.com. So those three, the main platforms right now. And
Okay.
if we're talking about more of the coaching related stuff, you can look for me. Just go to superior.coach. That's in www.superior.coach. And then that's where you can find me. And that'll link to my Facebook. I'm most active on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram too.
Cool, man. All right. Well, I appreciate taking your time. Have
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
awesome chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been fun talking with you. Yeah. I appreciate this too.
So for me, you can find my art. I got a print shop down in the link below. I'm going to put all of Jaws links as well. And I've got 2 free comics that you can download, Philip K. Dick comics, based on his short stories. He's the writer for Blade Runner and Minority Report. And then I've also got the Blade Runner and Minority Report analysis videos here on the YouTube channel. I'm eventually going to get back to doing the Minority Report videos here sometime soon. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe. And you guys have a great night.
Yeah.
Take it easy.